Hey everybody, today I wanted to show how to do a simple CA finish on a wood pen blank. So to set this up, I'm going to use a pen mandrel, and I've got an adjustable mandrel here with a mandrel saver, and I'm using these nylon or HDPE finishing bushings. And the reason I do that is when I put CA on this and cover the blank, if I use metal bushings that are turned to the sides of this, I'm going to glue them to the blank. And the problem with that is when you go to release them, you have to either break them loose or cut them loose, and you risk chipping the finish on the ends of the pen blank, so that's not good. By using these simple little bushings, it eliminates a lot of problems. So what I've done here, if you want to take a look, I've put the bushing on the pen blank and then the other bushing. Now these are little cones, 60 degrees I believe, and they fit into the tube. Now if you had a slim line, obviously that wouldn't fit, but most everything else does. And these aren't going to be perfectly centered, so you may notice some wobble when your blank turns because you're not really fitting these in, they're just kind of sitting on here. But for what they're intended, they work perfectly. So the blank is turned. What I've done is I turned with my carbide tool to give me the best finish, and then I've sanded up to 600 with this. I did 320, 400, and 600, and it's pretty smooth. Remember, you're encasing the blank in the CA, so any dust or debris or scratches that you have on your blank, you're gonna coat them and keep them in there forever. So you wanna make sure your blank is as clean and smooth as you want it in the end. So the tool rest is out of the way. I'm gonna start the finish. I'm just using simple paper towels. A lot of people have a favorite brand or style, whatever works for you, do that. But I just tear up paper towels, fold them into little squares, and I'm going to start with the thin CA. Now, a little bit on the CA that I'm going to use, I'm using Mercury Flex. This CA is made in the USA by a veteran-owned company, pretty cool, and they helped develop the Flex for pen finishes. So this is a really cool thing that we can use this. I like to do one coat of thin, which is the blue bottle, and then I do 4 or 5 or 6, depending on the wood, of the medium. Now you can get away with one or the other. If you're just doing thin, you'll just need to do more coats. If you're doing medium, you're gonna see about what I do here for that. Now this is a piece of cherry. It doesn't take a ton of CA because it's not real porous, it's very smooth. If it was a more porous wood like walnut, I may have to fill more voids and more grains, so that might take a few extra coats. So this is a nice one to do. So first thing I'm going to do is put a thin coat on, and I'm going to turn my speed way down. This was at 3,500 from turning. I'm going to slow it down to about 800 or 900. And if you want to go a little slower, it doesn't hurt anything. So I'm going to first put on my thin. What I do, I just take my paper towel and I run one little line across this. Now, it's going to soak through this, so if your fingers are on the backside, you're going to glue your fingers to the paper towel, and you're also going to potentially burn them, because when this thin goes off fairly quickly, it's going to start smoking as it sets. So I want to put the thin on here real quick, spread it around, let it soak in a little bit, and then get it off and stop using that because I don't want to get my fingers. You can wear gloves, or some people use pen bags from the pen parts and put them on their fingers, but I don't do that. So real quick, a thin line. I'm going to just go across like that, put it on, and I'm just going to rub it in gently. I'm not pushing too hard because I don't want to wipe it all off. I want to let some glue sit on there and soak in. Now with my first coat of thin, I let it just sit here and spin for a minute before I hit it with the accelerator. Now Flex is made to be used with the accelerator. That's what cures it. If you just put this on and don't use the accelerator, it's gonna stay soft and sticky and it's not gonna set. It'll take days, maybe days, I don't know. So now that this has had a minute to set, I'm just gonna spritz it, and that's all you need, that little tiny bit of accelerator. So if I touch this, it's not tacky or sticky at all. I don't feel any stickiness. Now, it's probably hard to see on the camera, but you can see little lines where the CA was going around with the paper towel. That's totally normal. I don't want any huge peaks or valleys, and I don't want any hard crusty from the accelerator, but as long as you're just using a little bit, you won't have that. So next I'm going to do my medium. And I typically, with cherry, with no engraving or anything, just straight wood, I'll do 3 or 4 or 5 coats with this. It's good to use a new paper towel, so that way the hard crusty doesn't get on your blank, or flip it around and use the other side. So there again, this is just going to be a thin stripe. The medium doesn't soak in near as fast as the thin, so that's kind of nice. And I want to put it on with just gentle pressure because I want to coat it. I don't want to wipe it on and wipe it off because I've already got that thin layer there from the first coat. So once I do that, a couple little spritzes. Now I'm going to do my second coat of medium. I got a clean paper towel. I'm going to put the little line on there. And again, just light pressure. And I just want to lay that coat down and let it spin. I'm going to spritz it. A couple of words of warning here. You don't want to go too fast, and the reason being is when you put your CA on, you can fling it at yourself or all over the room. And 2, you don't want to rub this too long. If you rub it too long or create any kind of heat, it's going to stick and wrap up, and then you get to sand it all down again to sand off the glued on paper towel. So you just want to apply it, smooth it out, and move on. So 3rd coat, I believe. Just gonna spread that nice and flat, and then I'm done. Little spritz. You can see it does not take much. So I'll put my last coat on here. I'm gonna make sure it's nice and smooth, not necessarily extra heavy, but just even flow coat. So that was my 3 or 4 mediums. I don't know how, I lost count. I'm gonna make sure I spritz this one a little better, just because I want to make sure all that cures. Now I tend to let it spin for an extra minute. Not that this does anything, it's just habit. But then I can stop it, make sure it's not sticky or tacky. And the beauty here is I don't have any high ridges. So I'm gonna now move on to sanding and polishing. The key for me when I'm sanding a CA finish is it needs to be quick and fairly light. If you have to do a lot of hard sanding, something else in the process is wrong. It shouldn't be real wavy, it shouldn't be real crusty, it shouldn't be bumpy. You're not sanding out your blank from before. All you're sanding is that finish. So it needs to be fairly quick and fairly even-handed. I keep everything wet so that it keeps it cool. If you build up any kind of heat in the CA, you're going to melt it or burn right through it. So what I've got here is a piece of 800 sandpaper. This is just wet, dry sandpaper. I'm gonna make a couple little passes here. And I can hear that that was kind of taking off any of the high spots. When I feel it, it feels perfectly smooth already. Now that doesn't mean that it's done. It's certainly not done, but it's perfectly smooth as far as ridges, at least what my finger can feel. So then I move right to my micro mesh. This is the 1500. I like to keep it moving, keep it wet, and I'm not putting a lot of pressure. I'm just putting a little bit of downward on it with my fingers, like the weight of my fingers. There again, just check it quick. If I use any of these for very long, I can sand through my finish. So I'm essentially just going through the grits, one, cleaning up the one before, making sure that I keep it wet and cool. And I'm gonna go through all the grits fairly quickly. I found that if I have to spend a lot of time on them, then I did something wrong. This finish is, it's common that people make this a little harder than it needs to be, I've found. Or they think it's harder than it needs to be. So maybe this will kind of show you how easy it is. So that's my 12,000. I might give this one just a little extra, make sure those ends are nice. Now, I'm gonna dry it. And I'm gonna go ahead and stop it, dry it, make sure everything's dry on the ends. And I'm just using a paper towel here. You could let it spin or speed up the spinning if you want. There's 3,000. Any way you want to dry it, no big deal. Now I'm going to put some plastic polish on here. And I'm not going to need a ton. I'm just going to do, again, a little line. Well, that's more than normal, but that's all right. And there again, I'm going to reduce my speed. Otherwise, I'll be tasting it when it hits me in the face. And I'm just gonna put the polish on and go back and forth with moderate pressure. I don't need to press too hard. And I like to kind of go up from the where it's wet with the polish to the dry and kind of give it like a buffing action. Get those ends clean. And you can probably see the shine marks on there. I don't know if the camera's picking it up. But as I do this, I can start to see it go from a dull shine to a really bright shine just from the lights in the shop here. So hopefully that'll be the case when we're done. And I've probably done this more than I normally would as far as the polishing. It's pretty quick. And there you go. It's hard to see on the camera, but we got a pretty nice even coat on there. Now with CA, if your finish isn't good, I would just sand this and redo it. So I typically spend 5 or 6, 7 minutes on a CA finish. The beauty of that is if I don't like how it came out or if I had some lines that I didn't see when I was doing it, I'm gonna sand it down with 400 or 600 and do it all over again, and it doesn't take much time. So it really is that easy. All of these products that I used, the Mercury, the accelerator, the polish, they're all on the website on Turner's. I'll post the links below. If you have any questions or comments, just put them in the comments. Makes sense.